Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a whole stack of sources about a really surprising new piece of tech in the wearable space. If you follow sites like, say, the 5K Runner, or, keep tabs on experts like Rainmaker over at dcranemaker.com, that's pronounced DC Rainmaker, you've probably seen the chatter.
Oh, yeah. Definitely been making waves. Garmin, they've got their serious athlete watches, the Forerunners, the Fenix line, and then the more lifestyle Venu series. But
Wow.
they've just dropped something, well, unexpected, the Venu X1.
Right, the Venu line usually aims at, let's say, recreational users.
Yep.
Basic tracking, smartwatch stuff.
Exactly. But the sources we've looked at, they're saying this X1 model just kind of blows that up. It apparently tries to bridge the gap, packing in features from their high-end lines into a totally different kind of body.
And it seems pretty clear from the commentary what Garmin's aiming for here. This isn't just a minor update.
No, not at all. The sources position it as a real challenger, looking straight at devices like the Apple Watch Ultra 2, but, with that distinct Garmin flavor focusing on the sports side.
Okay, so let's get into these sources then. Let's unpack what this Venu X1 actually is, and more importantly, what the experts, the reviewers, are saying about it.
Sounds good. Maybe start with the physical stuff, because honestly, the design seems to be what struck commentators first. It's different.
Absolutely. The thing everyone seems to mention right off the bat is how incredibly thin it is.
Yeah, that's the headline feature, physically speaking. Garmin is calling it their thinnest watch ever, just 8 millimeters thick.
8 millimeters, that's tiny for a GPS watch.
It really is, and reviewers immediately put that next to the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which is, 14.4 millimeters?
Right.
So significantly thicker. One source actually said the Venu X1 makes the Ultra 2 look like a beefcake. Gives you an idea. That thinness feels like a major design goal here.
Wow, okay. Beefcake, and then there's the screen. Also not typical Garmin.
No, it's massive and rectangular. A 2-inch AMOLED touchscreen, 448 by 486 pixels. The actual display area is huge, a 1,185 square millimeters.
Which is what, bigger than the Apple Watch Ultra 2 screen?
Slightly, yeah. The sources note the Ultra 2 is 1.93 inches, so the Venu X1 packs a bit more screen real estate. One reviewer, apparently an Ultra 2 user, even described the X1 screen feeling like a wall-mounted TV-sized display on their wrist. Said they were still getting used to it. It pushes right out to the edges, very little bezel.
So super thin, giant, sharp screen. What's it actually made of? Does it feel premium or just light?
It seems like a mix. The main case is this lightweight fiber-reinforced polymer, which helps keep the weight down. But then you get a titanium case back, which adds a more premium touch. And the lens is sapphire crystal, so good scratch resistance, which you'd expect at this kind of price point.
And the weight, I saw slightly different numbers mentioned.
Yeah, there was a slight discrepancy in the sources. Some said 34 grams, others 40 grams with the band. But either way, it's noticeably lighter than the Venu 3, which is around 47 grams, and much lighter than the Apple Watch Ultra 2 at over 61 grams. The consensus seems to be it feels light, less bulky than other big smartwatches.
And it comes with that nylon strap as standard.
That's right, the Comfort Fit nylon band. Reviewers seem to like how comfortable it felt, but, they also pointed out the practical side fabric bands just stay wet longer after a swim or shower than silicone does. A minor point, but worth noting.
Okay, and a feature pulled straight from the rugged lines. The flashlight.
Yep, it's got the built-in LED flashlight, just like the Fenix and Epix. It's on the top edge. Sources confirmed it has the usual 4 white brightness levels and the 1 red level. It's actually a really useful feature, not something you typically see on these more lifestyle-oriented watches.
Yeah, definitely handy. But here's a big departure, button-wise, especially for a watch with supposedly advanced features.
Oh yeah, this really stood out in the reviews. Only 2 physical buttons.
Just 2.
Just 2. Which is, fewer than the Venu 3's 3, and way different from the usual 5 buttons on Forerunners and Fenix watches that athletes use to navigate menus without touching the screen.
So it really forces you towards using the touchscreen more.
Exactly. It leans hard into that smartwatch feel. But as some sources pointed out, that does raise questions about usability during really intense workouts. When your hands are sweaty or you're wearing gloves, touchscreens can be tricky then.
Okay, so physically it sounds like super sleek, huge screen, lightweight, premium touches, but maybe some usability questions with the buttons. But the really interesting part, where the sources spend a lot of time, is the software, this blend of worlds.
Right. This is the core story, isn't it? How it tries to fuse the Venu's look and feel the UI with the serious data-heavy software engine from the Forerunner and Phoenix lines.
So the interface looks like a Venu, but underneath.
Underneath, it's packing heat. The sources were genuinely surprised, I think, to see things like full offline topo-active mapping.
Not just breadcrumbs, but actual maps.
Proper, downloadable, routable topographic maps right on the watch. That's a huge feature, usually reserved for the top-tier adventure watches.
Which enables all the advanced navigation stuff too, presumably.
Precisely. You get round-trip routing, tell it how far you want to go, it suggests routes, you can navigate to points of interest you've saved, and it does automatic rerouting if you go off course. These are hardcore navigation tools.
And what about the training metrics? The stuff athletes obsess over.
A lot of the big ones are there. Reviewers specifically called out Climb Pro, for real-time ascent data.
Yeah.
Training readiness score, that's huge, telling you how recovered you are based on sleep, HRV, load.
Super useful.
Yeah. And training status, are you productive, peaking, strained? Endurance score, which measures your capacity for long efforts. Hill score, assessing your uphill running power. These are all pulled from the high-end watches.
These aren't just simple summaries, are they? They're analytical tools.
Definitely. It also gets Strava live segments on the watch itself, which is great for cyclists and runners chasing personal bests. Cycling Power Guide for structured power-based workouts, Garmin Share for sending routes around, focus modes to cut down distractions during activities, and the real-time stamina feature, helping you pace yourself during runs or rides.
Okay, so it's got the navigation chops, the training analysis.
Yeah.
What about connecting to external sensors and stuff? Does it go beyond the basics?
Yeah, the sources confirmed it supports a much wider range of sensors than a typical Venu. Things like extended display mode, using the watch screen for your bike computer data, golf club sensors, rangefinders.
Even in-reach communicators.
Yep, in-reach support, and cycling tech like electronic shifting systems, Shimano D2. That ability to connect to a whole ecosystem of external gear was highlighted as a key step up, letting serious users get more detailed data.
All right, so it's definitely got a serious sports brain transplant. But does it still function well as an everyday smartwatch? Does it keep those lifestyle features?
That seems to be the other half of the equation. It keeps the built-in speaker and microphone, so you can take calls on your wrist if your phone's connected.
And voice notes. I saw one source point out that's actually a Phoenix 8 feature, not even on the latest Forerunner 970.
That's right, you can record quick voice memos. Pretty handy. And it supports voice commands too, either for watch functions or to access your phone's assistant like Siri or Google Assistant.
Music is essential for a lot of people.
It's covered. 32 gigs of internal storage. Plenty of space for downloading music and podcasts from Spotify, Deezer, Amazon Music, whatever, for phone-free listening. Assuming you have the subscriptions, of course.
And the standard smartwatch stuff is all there. Payments, notifications.
Yep. Garmin Pay for contactless payments is included. And you get all your smart notifications, emails, texts, app alerts. The sources noted Android users get a bit extra, like replying to texts with an on-screen keyboard or the Garmin Messenger app, and even viewing photos from notifications directly on that big screen.
Connectivity is the usual Bluetooth, ANT+, Wi-Fi.
Standard stuff there, yes.
Yeah.
And full access to the Connect IQ store for downloading extra watch faces, data fields, and apps to customize it.
Plus all the expected Garmin health and wellness tracking.
Absolutely. It's got the 2147 monitoring heart rate, respiration stress via HRV status, advanced sleep tracking with the sleep coach feature, body battery energy monitoring. Pulse ox, though, the usual caveats about wrist-based SpO2 accuracy apply.
Sure.
Health snapshot for getting a quick overview of key metrics. Nap detection, jet lag advisor, redshift mode for easier night viewing, and it uses Garmin's latest Elevate Gen 5 optical heart rate sensor.
And I think I saw mention of a couple of small, maybe unexpected additions.
Yeah, kind of neat little things. Reviewers mentioned a built-in calculator app, which actually includes a tip calculator function, practical, and also new options for adjusting the font size on the watch, which makes sense with that big display, making notifications easier to read.
Okay, so it genuinely sounds like it packs a massive amount in, pulling from both the Venu and Forerunner Fenix playbooks. Yeah. But there have to be trade-offs, right? To get that thin design, that huge screen, something's got to give. What did the sources pinpoint as the downsides or omissions?
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest one, mentioned consistently across the board, is battery life. Especially when you compare it to other Garmins, even other Venus.
Right. The Venu 3 already had less battery than, say, a Phoenix.
Exactly. So the Venu X1 is rated for up to 8 days in smartwatch mode. The Venu 3 could get up to 14 days. That's a pretty big drop.
Wow, almost half.
And if you turn on the always-on display, which, let's be honest, a lot of people will want to do with that nice AMOLED screen, it drops down to just 2 days.
Only 2 days.
Yeah, compared to 3 days always on for the Venu 3, GPS mode is rated up to 16 hours. So the reviewers basically said, look, this is the price you pay for that big, bright screen and thin design. It pushes it much closer to Apple Watch territory in terms of charging frequency, rather than that classic Garmin multi-week battery life.
Okay, battery is a big one. What else? Water resistance.
That's another area where it doesn't quite match up to the top-tier rugged watches or even the Apple Watch Ultra 2. It's rated swim, 5 ATM. So good for surface swimming, showering, rated to 50 meters. But the sources pointed out this means no advanced swim metrics, no diving features like you get on a Fenix 8, and it's way less than the Ultra 2's 100-meter rating and proper 40-meter dive certification.
So maybe not the best choice for serious water sports athletes.
Probably not, no. And despite grabbing so many advanced training features, it seems it actually misses a couple of the very latest ones that just landed on the Forerunner 970.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Specifically, some reviewers focused on running noted the lack of running tolerance, that's also called impact load, basically analyzing the physical stress from your runs, and also running economy, which measures how efficiently you run. Minor omissions for some maybe, but for data-driven runners, those are becoming key metrics.
And what about the GPS? For a watch with full mapping, you'd expect top-tier GPS, right?
You would, wouldn't you? But it doesn't have multi-band or dual-frequency GPS.
Right. At that price.
Yeah. Now, sources like Raymaker over at DC Rainmaker gave some important context here. He mentioned that Garmin's non-dual-frequency GPS can still be very accurate, sometimes even better than competitors' dual-frequency implementations.
Okay.
But still, for a $799 watch that's pushing its mapping and outdoor capabilities, not having multiband was called a quirky omission. The feeling was it might be less reliable in really tough signal areas, deep canyons, dense cities compared to watches that do have it. Bit of a head-scratcher.
And any limitations on the health sensor side?
The main thing noted was the lack of ECG capability. It can't take an electrocardiogram reading. This suggests it doesn't have the specific hardware needed for that, which is a feature found on the Apple Watch and some other premium smartwatches, becoming kind of table stakes in this price range.
Right. And finally, there's some commentary on the name itself.
Yeah, universally, reviewers seem to find the name Venu X1 a bit weird.
Weird how...
Well, some said it sounded like something from a hunting gear line, maybe confusing. But mostly the feeling was it just doesn't clearly communicate what the watch is, this premium, feature-packed hybrid. Something like Venu Pro, or even a whole new name might have made more sense, according to the sources.
Okay, so it sounds like Garmin definitely made some conscious choices here. They prioritized that super thin design and the big screen, and the trade-offs were battery life compared to their usual standards, top-end water resistance, a couple of niche running metrics, and maybe the very best GPS and health sensor tech.
Yeah.
How do these choices make it stack up against other watches? Let's start inside Garmin's own house versus the Venu 3.
Yeah, the comparisons really help place it. Against the Venu 3, it's clear the X1 isn't just an iterative update. It's almost a different category wearing the same family name.
How so?
Well, the X1 is way thinner, like we said, 8mm versus over 12mm for the Venu 3. It has that much larger rectangular 2-inch screen versus the Venu 3's 1.4-inch round one. And the massive difference is the software. The X1 gets all those advanced training metrics and full mapping, which the Venu 3 completely lacks.
But the Venu 3 wins on battery.
Big time. Up to 14 days versus 8 days for the X1. Plus, the Venu 3 has that third button, and it's significantly cheaper, around $450 compared to the X1's $800 price tag. So the sources basically framed it as they serve different users. X1 is for someone who wants those high-end features and maps in a sleeker body and is willing to pay more and charge more often. Venu 3 is for the more casual user, prioritizing battery and simplicity.
Makes sense. Okay, what about against Garmin's actual high-end sports watches, the Forerunner 970 or Fenix 8?
This is where that bridging the gap idea comes in. The Venu X1 basically borrows the core sports and mapping software from those watches. You get largely the same data, same navigation, but it presents it through that Venu-style touch interface with only 2 buttons. Not the 5-button control athletes often prefer on the Forerunner Fenix. It's much thinner and lighter than either of those. It does get the voice notes feature like the Fenix 8, which is interesting, but it gives up things like the Fenix 8's 100-meter water rating and dive features, some of those newest running metrics from the 970, and crucially, the multi-band GPS that's available on the higher-end versions of both those lines.
So you get most of the capability, but not the extreme ruggedness or the traditional button control.
Exactly. You trade some of that hardcore edge for the slimmer, perhaps more stylish design. That seems to be the deal.
All right, now the big one. The comparison multiple sources made explicitly. The Apple Watch Ultra 2.
Yeah, this felt like the key rivalry everyone was looking at, especially since they launched at the exact same $799.99 price point, and both have these large premium displays.
Hardware-wise, the X1 seems to have the edge on paper for size and weight.
Definitely. Consistently highlighted, the X1 is significantly thinner, 8mm versus 14.4mm, and lighter, around 40 g versus over 61 g, even though its screen is slightly bigger,
Right.
2 inches versus 1.93. However, one source made an interesting comment. They said, despite the specs, the Venu X1 feels absolutely nothing like it in hand compared to the Ultra 2.
Oh, what do they mean by that?
They didn't fully elaborate, but it suggests maybe a difference in perceived density or build quality, perhaps.
Right.
Even though both use premium materials, titanium case back on the X1, full titanium case on the Ultra 2, something about the feel was apparently quite different.
Interesting nuance.
Yeah.
Okay, feature-wise, this is where the Apple versus Garmin philosophies really show, right?
The commentary was pretty clear. Garmin with the Venu X1 goes far further than Apple does in terms of those sporty features. Things like the depth of training load analysis, recovery metrics, the built-in mapping, those are areas where the X1 is seen as much more advanced for athletes.
Whereas the Apple Watch Ultra 2 has strengths elsewhere.
Right. The Ultra 2 is seen as stronger on the broader health front, with its certified ECG, temperature sensing for cycle tracking, the proper depth gauge, and dive computer functions. Plus, its deeper integration into the whole Apple ecosystem, and of course, built-in cellular connectivity, which the X1 lacks.
Battery life, though, remains a clear Garmin advantage, even with the X1's reduced numbers.
Oh, for sure. The X1's up to 8 days, or 2 days always on, still blows away the Apple Watch Ultra 2's standard up to 36 hours. Yes, the Ultra 2 has that low power mode that can stretch things out to 72 hours, but it cuts off a lot of features. So for anyone wanting to charge less often or track multi-day activities without worry, the reviewer saw the Garmin as having the clear edge there.
But the flip side is durability and connectivity.
Correct. The Venu X1, 5 ATM water resistance, sapphire crystal. The Apple Watch Ultra 2, 100-meter water resistance, proper dive certification, EN13318 up to 40 meters, IP6X dust proofing, and MIL STD810H tested for ruggedness. Plus, it has cellular built-in standard and that customizable action button. So the takeaway seems to be, the Ultra 2 is the tougher, more connected, more health-certified device overall. The Venu X1 is sleeker, lighter, with deeper built-in sports science and mapping, different priorities.
Okay, so summing up the source's view, the Venu X1 is this really unexpected watch. Super thin, huge screen, manages to cram in a lot of Garmin's top-end sports features, making it a direct lifestyle-focused competitor to the Apple Watch Ultra 2. But it achieves this by making specific trade-offs: less battery than other Garmin's, lower water rating, missing ECG and multiband GPS, focusing instead on that design and the core athletic tracking.
That captures the consensus pretty well, I think. It's a genuinely new kind of product for Garmin, filling a gap maybe they didn't even know they had.
And there was one final thought from the sources about its long-term prospects. Something about software support.
Yeah, that was an important point raised by Raymaker at DC Rainmaker. He noted that while the hardware and the initial feature set are impressive, the real test for the Venu X1, especially for the serious users it seems to target, will be Garmin's software update strategy. Meaning, historically, the Venu line just hasn't received the same kind of ongoing major feature updates after launch that the Forerunner and Phoenix lines get. They tend to be more static. So the question is, will Garmin treat this premium $800 Venu X1 like a true high-end device and keep adding significant new features via software updates like they do for Forerunner Phoenix, or will it follow the typical Venu pattern? That could really determine its long-term appeal.
That's a really crucial point. The initial package is one thing, but ongoing value is key at this price.
So that leaves us with a question for you, the listener. Thinking about this Venu X1, the $800 price, this very specific, maybe surprising mix of deep training features and mapping, but packed into this incredibly thin body with a massive screen. And considering those trade-offs, the battery hit compared to other Garmin's, the 5 ATM, water rating, no ECG, no multiband GPS, does this device hit the sweet spot for you? Is this kind of hybrid taking the guts of a serious sports watch and putting them in a sleeker, more lifestyle-friendly package, the future direction for premium smartwatches? Or is it more of a niche experiment for a very particular user? Definitely something to mull over.